They said he was just another old man on a public bench, breathing too loud, sitting too long, dragging around a metal tank like it was someone else's problem. That's what the young officer muttered into his radio as he approached, one hand already tightening around his cuffs. He didn't ask the man's name, didn't look twice at the military-issued jacket folded over the duffel, didn't notice the cane carved with battle notches, or the VA tag clipped to his belt loop. Just saw a slow, slouched figure with weathered skin and cloudy eyes, nodding quietly in the morning chill. But when the cuffs clicked shut and the old man gave no fight, just whispered, "This ain't the first time I've been bound for someone else's comfort." That was the moment it all began unraveling. Because 2 benches away, a woman had been filming, and she wasn't just a bystander. She was a sister, a daughter, a citizen, and her brother was stationed 3 blocks away. And by the time that old man was in the back of the cruiser, the street had gone quiet. Too quiet. Until the dark Humvee pulled up. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And if you believe no one should be forgotten after they serve, like and subscribe, because this isn't just a story about one man. It's about how the right people stood up when dignity sat in chains. His name was Marshall Gaines, but they called him Mac, back when he still wore the stripes. Vietnam, 2 tours. Desert Storm, 1 black op, so buried in clearance he still wouldn't speak of it. These days, he just carried oxygen and silence, 1 in each hand. That morning, Mac was early to the VA clinic. Too early, and the bench outside the city bus terminal gave him a place to breathe. He rested there, his cane laid across his lap, a thermos of weak coffee tucked at his side, eyes scanning each face like they were ghosts in a memory. People passed. Some nodded. Some whispered. One man scoffed loud enough to hear. Should have made better life choices. Mac didn't flinch. He'd been through worse than passing insults from civilians who'd never seen shrapnel. But then the cruiser rolled in. Officer Trent Bellamy, 27, clean uniform, mirrored sunglasses, the kind of swagger that comes from thinking the badge alone means you're right. "Sir, you can't loiter here," he said with a practiced tone. Mac nodded, polite. "Not loitering. Just waiting on my ride to the clinic. Bad lungs, you see." He even lifted the oxygen mask slightly, offering proof. But Bellamy didn't care. "Do you have ID?" Mac pulled out his VA card, the corners curled and plastic faded. The officer glanced at it, scoffed. "This expired. Got anything real?" That's when Tanya Ellis noticed. She worked in the courthouse down the street and had seen Mac more than once waiting for the VA shuttle. She stepped closer, phone in hand, thumb hovering over record. "He's a vet," she said. "He's not bothering anyone." But the officer waved her off. "Ma'am, do you want to obstruct a police officer?" He turned back to Mac, who was struggling now, pushing up with his cane. His knee buckled, decades of bone damage and arthritis collapsing at once, and he went down on one hand. "You resisting?" the officer barked. "Sir, stay still." Then came the cuffs. Sharp, cold, metallic. One wrist. Then the other. Mac didn't resist. He simply looked up, oxygen tube half dragging from his nostril, and said, "You ever been cuffed for sitting still, officer?" That's when Tanya hit record. And that's when her brother, Staff Sergeant Jordan Ellis, 3 blocks away at the Armory Training Division, received a text that only said, "Get here. Now." Within 5 minutes, the video had been reposted 50 times. By 10, it was at 2,000. Mac was loaded into the squad car like baggage. The cuffs dug into his wrist bones, and he closed his eyes, trying to slow his breathing, focus on the rhythm like he used to do under fire. And then it came, the unmistakable low hum of diesel growl. The military Humvee didn't speed. It coasted. Then another. And another. 12 soldiers in total, uniforms sharp, boots clapping pavement. Staff Sergeant Ellis in front. "You have Marshall Gaines in custody?" he asked the startled officer. "Under what charge?" "Loitering and failure to provide ID," Bellamy said. His voice cracked. Ellis didn't yell. He saluted. "You cuffed Commander Gaines." "Commander?" Bellamy blinked. "He's just some," but the air shifted. Even the radio chatter and the cruiser seemed to freeze. Ellis turned to the back of the vehicle, where Max sat motionless, eyes barely open. "Sir," he said quietly, "you want to get out now?" Mac blinked once, slowly, then nodded. Ellis turned back to Bellamy. "Unlock him. Now." When the cuffs came off, Mac stepped out unsteadily. The soldiers didn't cheer. They didn't clap. But every one of them It didn't take long for silence to become shame, not when 12 soldiers in full uniform stood shoulder to shoulder around a police cruiser like it was enemy armor and the man inside had just survived a war no one else saw coming. Officer Trent Bellamy tried to laugh it off at first. "Just doing my job," he muttered, though even he could feel the weight of boots that didn't move, of stares that didn't blink. Max stood quiet outside the car, his wrist raw, one pant leg muddy from the concrete, a slow trickle of blood trailing down the side of his hand from where the cuff had cut him. He didn't speak, didn't scold, just stood with the oxygen tube fluttering gently in the breeze and his cane balanced loosely between his fingers like he might just drop it and keep walking without help. The crowd had tripled since the video hit local news. Tanya's clip had spread like wildfire. People whispered. Some saluted. A few cried. One elderly woman knelt beside Mac, gently placed her hand on his, and said, "My brother served with you. You pulled him out of that bunker in '71. Mac didn't answer, but the way his chin lifted slightly said everything. Inside the precinct 2 blocks away, phones rang nonstop. Someone called from the mayor's office. Another from the Pentagon. And when the commander of the local reserve unit picked up a line, the voice on the other end said, "Don't let that man walk home. Don't even let him walk alone." Staff Sergeant Ellis stepped forward, clearing his throat, eyes locked on Bellamy like he was briefing a rookie in basic. Marshal Gaines led 2 units out of Tay Ninh province under blackout. 0 comms. No maps. Avalon working. 3 Purple Hearts. 1 Distinguished Service Cross. He trained half the current Special Forces doctrine. You didn't cuff a man, officer. You shackled a living textbook on how to survive when the mission fails. Bellamy's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. He didn't say anything. Ellis stepped closer. He shouldn't have to. And that line, that one line, made its way into the news later that night, carved into headlines like scripture. He shouldn't have to. Max sat down slowly on the edge of the bench again, the same one he'd been cuffed beside, but now the space around it was cleared like a throne. The cane rested across his lap. His fingers traced a small inscription near the handle, JG73, initials of a man who didn't make it home. For a moment, it looked like Mac might finally speak, but instead he turned his head slightly, watching the traffic, the clouds, the way everything just kept moving as if the world hadn't almost forgotten him. Tanya stood beside her brother now, tears drying on her cheeks. "We never knew," she whispered. "He doesn't tell anyone," Ellis replied. "Not because it's secret, but because to him, it's already over." A van from Channel 9 rolled up. Reporters swarmed the sidewalk. Ellis stepped in front of them, shielding Mac. "He won't speak to the press. You want a story? Tell the one about the guy who got cuffed for breathing." Mac finally stirred. "Let them talk," he murmured, voice gravel low but steady. "It ain't about me. It's about how easy it is to erase somebody who already gave everything." The precinct door swung open hard. Captain Maria Thompson emerged, her uniform immaculate, her jaw tight. She walked straight through the crowd, past the cameras, past Bellamy, and stopped directly in front of Mac. "Commander Gaines," she said, saluting. "I'm sorry. This department failed you today." Mac didn't return the salute. He looked up at her slowly. "Not the department. Just one man who didn't ask questions." She nodded, pain flickering behind her eyes. "He'll be off duty immediately, pinning review. And we'd like to offer you." Mac held up a single finger, and she stopped mid-sentence. "Don't offer me anything. Just teach them to see people before they see problems." Bellamy had stepped back into the shadows now, hands twitching, eyes wide. One cadet whispered, "That's him." Another murmured. He saluted under fire. An older man watching from a nearby cafe said, "I served under Mac. He saved a platoon with a compass and a guess." The stories poured out now, uncooled like smoke from a long-sealed chamber. One by one, people stepped forward. A mechanic, a nurse, a postal worker. All of them owed something to a man who never asked for credit. Mac shifted on the bench. "Too loud now," he said quietly. Ellis knelt beside him. "We'll get you home, sir." But Mac shook his head. "Not yet. Let him feel it. Let him see it. Then maybe they won't do it again." And so he sat. For 30 more minutes. The sun rising behind him. The flag on the courthouse visible in the distance. And for once, the city didn't rush past. It watched. It listened. It remembered. At exactly 11:14 a.m., a black SUV arrived from the Regional Department of Defense office. Out stepped a woman in full dress blues, her hair pinned tight, her medals clinking lightly as she walked. Brigadier General Amanda Kane. She didn't bring cameras. She brought a folder. She walked straight to Officer Bellamy and said, You will address the man behind you as commander. Then you'll hand over your badge. Then you'll listen." And he did. With trembling hands, he turned and faced Mac. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "You deserved better." Mac didn't nod, didn't speak, just looked to him like a man measuring a younger version of something he used to be. Then Mac said, "One day, maybe you'll understand what it means to carry silence instead of rage." And with that, he rose, cane steady, legs slow but sure. He didn't look back. Didn't need to. The soldiers followed without command. Civilians cleared the way. And behind him, the squad car door stayed open, as if even it knew it would never carry weight like that again. They didn't call it a ceremony, because he wouldn't have shown up if they had. Marshal Gaines didn't want medals, or speeches, or folded flags. He wanted his space back, his bench, his breath, and for the world to stop seeing his oxygen tank before they saw his name. But what happened that afternoon wasn't for him, not really. It was for the ones who needed to remember, especially the young officer now sitting front row in full uniform, hands clasped, eyes locked forward, every word a quiet lesson burned into the walls around him. The city had gathered under quiet skies beside the very same bench where Mac had been handcuffed just 10 days before. But now it gleamed, polished and bolted into fresh stone, a bronze plaque mounted just above the seat, reserved for those who carried us when we couldn't walk, in honor of Commander Marshal Gaines. There were no parades, no trumpets, no media swarm. Just a gathering of soldiers in formation, veterans in wheelchairs, families with photos folded in their hands, and one old man sitting beside the new sign, cane across his knees, cap in his lap, face still unreadable, but somehow fuller than before. The mayor spoke briefly. So did Brigadier General Amanda Keene. But it was Tanya Ellis who stepped forward and gave the words that stuck. This man didn't just serve in war. He served in silence. And silence, when it holds dignity, is louder than applause. Behind her, Staff Sergeant Jordan Ellis placed a sealed glass case beside the bench. Inside it, Mac's original VAID, the one Officer Bellamy had mocked, now reframed, with a quote etched below, "He shouldn't have to." Mac didn't look at it long, just nodded once, and kept his eyes on the horizon like he was tracking a storm no one else could see. And when it came time for him to speak, they hadn't asked him to, but he stood anyway. He didn't hold the mic, didn't raise his voice. "I didn't come back for more for thanks," he said. "I came back to rest." He tapped the cane once against the stone. Sometimes the way a country treats you when you sit still says more than how they cheer when you march. Then he sat again. That was it. That was all he needed to say. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred. Even Officer Bellamy, now demoted to desk review pending ethics retraining, stood quietly at the back with no badge on his chest. But something in his face had changed. He hadn't slept since that day. He'd watched the footage again and again. Not just the arrest, but the part that followed. The soldiers, the silence, the old man walking free while no one cheered because they were too ashamed to. Bellamy had written a letter. He never sent it. Just carried it folded in his pocket, like penance. At the end of the ceremony, while people dispersed and some approached Mac with handshakes or soft words, Bellamy waited until the crowd thinned. Then he walked up, slow, steady, no sunglasses, no armor. "Commander Gaines," he said, voice low, "there's no apology big enough. But I'll spend every shift trying to earn one." Mac looked up, eyes unreadable. "Don't earn my apology," he said. "Earn theirs." And he nodded toward a group of young cadets watching from across the plaza, all in fresh blues, too young to know what was possible, too old to be left ignorant. Bellamy followed his gaze and understood. "Yes, sir." He saluted. Mac didn't return it, just looked at him and said, "Learn to salute first with your eyes." Then he turned back to the bench, where Tanya's daughter now sat beside him, swinging her legs, asking questions about the cane and the stars on his shoulder. Mac answered slowly, patiently, like a teacher, like someone planting seeds he'd never see grow. Months passed. The footage became a case study in 2 departments. Ethics workshops referenced the Gaines incident. The phrase "he shouldn't have to" found its way into training modules. One department quietly made the bench a stop on its community policing tour. But Mac didn't care about all that. He just returned to his bench every Tuesday morning. Same time, same coffee thermos, same cane laid across his lap. Sometimes someone sat with him, sometimes not. He never told war stories. But if you asked right, he'd teach you something anyway. like how to breathe when your chest won't let you, or how to spot someone carrying invisible weight. And if you showed up early, you'd sometimes find Tanya already there, wiping the plaque clean with a soft cloth, or Ellis standing by in uniform, silent but present, as if still taking orders he never needed to hear. One morning in the spring, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. Out stepped a young soldier, clean cut, nervous, gripping something under his arm. He walked to the bench where Max sat and handed over a shadow box, still sealed. "My father said to give you this," the soldier said. "Said you saved his life. He died last year, but he never forgot." Mac opened it slowly. Inside, a medal, unclaimed, unworn, and a note, "For the man who taught me to walk back home without fear." Mac held it for a long time, then nodded, tucked it beneath the bench, and whispered, still marching. That was the last time anyone saw him at the bench. He didn't leave a note, didn't leave a nameplate or a will. Just a folded jacket on the seat and his cane propped upright beside the plaque. But to this day, if you pass that spot outside the terminal, you'll still see the sign, still read the line. And every once in a while, someone stops and sits beside it. They don't speak. They just look out over the road, maybe imagining 12 shadows in uniform, surrounding something fragile the world almost forgot. And if you listen close enough, if you sit long enough, you just might hear the whisper behind the silence. Not all scars are loud, but the ones earned in silence change everything.